What's going on, guys? It's Simo. Now, today I wanted to bring to you a discussion video about Zodiac because obviously there's a real big issue going on here when we look at YCS Pittsburgh results, and out of the entire top 32 cut, 32 out of 32 decks are playing the Zodiac engine in one form or another. Now, to be fair, there is some diversity within that because there are players that are playing pure Zodiac, Kaiju Zodiac, True Draco Zodiac, Predaplant Zodiac, Infernoid Zodiac, and then I think there was also Paleozoic Zodiac as well. I think there was one that managed to make the top 32 as well. So, overall, at least there's some diversity as well because Zodiac is essentially treated as an engine, and because of its flexibility and versatility, it can be splashed into a myriad of different archetypes, but we already know this. This is nothing new. But the thing about this is this really a problem that needs to be addressed? And a lot of people are saying that it is. I mean, I've played this deck religiously pretty much since it came out as well, so I, come from a place where I know what I'm talking about. This deck is absolutely crazy, and I feel like if you're not playing the Zodiac engine in some form or another, especially on a competitive level, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage going into whatever matchup you're going into. Now, to be fair, there are other matchups, or rather decks, that do stand somewhat of a competitively viable chance without needing to run the Zodiac engine. So, for example, if you're playing a pure True Draco deck, you could argue that because your deck revolves around a card like Masterpiece, that you could pretty much go on without needing to run, all these Rapiers and Broad Bulls and Dryadents, all these different things. And then there's also, True King Dinosaur as well. To an extent, the deck is extremely explosive, but the biggest thing that I guess stands out is the fact that not a single deck that wasn't playing the Zodiac engine managed to top YCS Pittsburgh. And I think this is something that we can really look at and decide, is this an issue that needs to be addressed? And if so, how are we going to go about doing that? So, when it comes to the Zodiac engine, there's a plethora of different cards we can look at to kind of see what the best way would be to solve this problem. So let's start with Zodiac Rapier, and I think it's fair to start with Rapier because Rapier is currently in the TCG the only card that has taken a hit in some form of another. Now, I remember a lot of people were saying that when Rapier was going to get hit to 2, the deck was going to be in a lot of trouble. I even said that myself. I didn't say that the deck was going to be dead, but I definitely thought it was going to take a severe hit to its consistency. But one thing that I didn't really consider when I was thinking about that is that compared to the OCG in Japan, we have Elder Entity Norden still legal, whereas Japan did not. And that makes a huge difference because that means we still have the Fusion Substitute combo completely viable. So one of the biggest things that people say is if we hit Rapier is one of the biggest problem cards because if you hit it, you're not going to be able to special summon out rats, recycle them with Daigusto Emerald, and continuously abuse the Rapier to get out the Dryadent, the Broad Bull, and then ultimately, get into other rank 4s as well. But the issue with that is, and I'm going to reflect on this a lot, is that in the OCG, Rapier is at 1, and Zodiac is still a tier 1 deck. The deck doesn't necessarily need Rapier to function. Now, that doesn't mean that Rapier is not a completely busted card, because it is. Rapier is completely fucking insane. But the issue is, the Zodiac cards on their own are so powerful that Rapier almost is just like, it just takes it over the top, but the deck can still function just as well without Rapier. So, even though you could put Rapier to 0, and I think the deck could still function. Maybe not as well as it does now, but it would definitely still be able to function, and the OCG has proven this. It's at 1 in the OCG, but players are not even playing it anymore because they're just maxing out on copies of Whiptail and Thoroughblade and Ram and all these other amazingly powerful cards because like I said, it was just a bonus on top of everything else the Zodiac engine is capable of providing for any deck. Now let's move on to Zodiac Barrage. Now, I've made the argument in the past that Zodiac Barrage is one of the most busted cards ever created, and the thing about it is, without Zodiac Barrage, Zodiac is in a really tough spot because Barrage breaks the rules for this deck and really makes it so that it's able to play around as many cards as it is able to. Reason being is, so for example, if you were to normal summon your Rapier or your Thoroughblade or your Whiptail, and your opponent were to hit it with like Solemn Warning or some sort of summon negation or even Solemn Strike on the effect of the Rapier, there's no other card in the Zoodiac deck that's able to pretty much recover if its normal summon gets stopped. Except for Zoodiac Barrage, and that's what's so crazy about Barrage, is that it's able to just play around the fact that the deck has an inherent weakness to having its normal summon stopped, but with Barrage it just doesn't matter. You can special summon out any Zoodiac monster and you can keep continuing your plays and pretty much be exactly back where you were initially. Now, what the crazy thing is about Barrage is on top of that, you can also provide extra Xyz material to some of your monsters, so again, you just don't even care. But in the OCG, Zoodiac Barrage is banned, and the deck is still competitively viable. It's still a tier 1 deck in Japan, even with Barrage at 0, even with Rapier at 1. So is Barrage really the problem here? Now I want to move on to some of the extra deck monsters. So let's start off with Zoodiac Broadbull, because a lot of people want to talk about Drident, because obviously Drident's banned in the OCG, so that's a pretty good reason to do so. But I want to start with Broadbull for several different reasons, especially reasons that are focused on here in the TCG. So Zoodiac Broadbull is able to search any single Beast Warrior monster, which extends to the entire Zoodiac archetype, but goes far beyond that and allows us to search things like the Lunalight Black Sheep, which enable us to get into the Fusion Substitute combo. On top of that, Zoodiac Broadbull is also generic and means that we can make several copies of Broadbull in a given turn, thanks to cards like Instant Fusion, or even if we manage to get more than, 2 level 4s on the board, we're able to make multiple copies, get multiple searches, and multiple pluses, in addition to just extend and make an extremely powerful turn. Now, I really want to talk about with the Fusion Substitute combo here, because that's the biggest thing. Going into Broadbull to search the Black Sheep to get to the Fusion Substitute essentially is what enables this whole combo. If Broadbull didn't exist, there would not be a viable way to access that Fusion Substitute as easily as we can with Broadbull. The fact that it's essentially a part of this basic combo and only just requires this one card is absolutely absurd. So there is an argument to make that if Zoodiac Broadbull were to get banned, that would actually solve a lot of the issues that we're currently facing with the deck. It gives the deck incredible amounts of recovery and searchability, and just does so many different things for the archetype that I really think the argument could be made that by banning Broadbull, you're really going to solve a lot of the issues in seeing Zoodiacs just doing as well as they are. A lot of the times, the card that you see in the extra deck that most Zoodiac players are going to be playing at 3 is Broadbull. Sometimes it might be Drident, but more often than not, Broadbull's the card being played at 3 copies, and I think that definitely says a lot, in terms of how strong this card is. Now, I do want to talk about Drident as well, because here in the TCG, we still have Drident at 3, and even though it's banned in the OCG, Drident is still an incredibly imposing card. I think it's so funny to say that, because if you told me a year or two ago that a card that needs to target a face-up card to destroy it would be extremely good, I would kind of laugh at you, because we're at a time where targeting effects and destruction effects were both terrible at the same time. But Zoodiac Drident is so imposing when it hits the field, and just the fact that it's a card that you need to have an answer to, and when you're deck building, you need to almost count the number of ways you're going to have outs to Drident, because it's such a common play, and you're going to be anticipating the Drident Daigusto Emerald turn 1 board, that if you don't have a way to out the Drident can just completely fuck up all of your plays, and you're not going to really be able to play, because the Drident's just going to be live, and then they're just going to continue on with their next turn, and they could probably OTK you from there, depending on how imposing the Drident is with the cards at your disposal. Drident is just an incredible card. It does so much. It enables combos with Ram and all these other different cards as well, now that we've moved into the Maximum Crisis format, that it's definitely a card that is worth getting hit as well, but I still think it doesn't really get at the core of the issue, because like I said, along with Rapier and Barrage, Zoodiac Drident is also hit on the OCG's Forbidden Limited list at 0, and the deck is still tier 1, so again, it's almost similar to Rapier. Drident's just like a bonus. The fact that I can have a monster that can fuck up your plays, that's just all I need. So last but not least, I want to discuss Fusion Substitute and Elder Entity Norden, because while they're not part of the Zoodiac engine, they pretty much are a part of the Fusion Substitute combo, which in turn means they're a part of the Zoodiac engine, because every deck that's playing Zoodiacs is playing the Fusion Substitute combo more often than not, so this is definitely something that warrants discussion. Now, I've been saying for a long time that Elder Entity Norden's time has come, because not only the fact that I had issues with Norden before we had the Fusion Substitute combo, but now that the Fusion Substitute combo exists, we are at a point where Elder Entity Norden is just so crazily abused that it's just completely unfair. The fact that you're able to draw anywhere from 2 to possibly like 6 cards off of a single turn if your opponent doesn't have a hand trap to stop you going first, that's just fucking ridiculous. And you could argue that by banning Norden, that solves the problem entirely, because then the Fusion Substitute combo can no longer exist. The thing about it is, you know, with cards like Chakanine and all this in the existence of Zoodiac as well, it makes the Fusion Substitute combo even easier to do than ever before, and it allows for just such degenerate plays that it really makes it that whoever goes first has a significant advantage over their opponent, especially if they're playing the Zoodiac engine on top of it. So a lot of the times people accuse this format of being a die roll format, that if you win, and assuming you're playing Zoodiacs, that you're in such an advantageous position that you can't lose, and more often than not, that actually ends up being the case. So I don't think that's very healthy for the game. There's definitely arguments to be made for all of the cards I talked about in today's discussion to get hit on the ban list, but I'm really curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below of what cards you feel like are the real problem with the Zoodiac engine, and what's really going to solve this problem, because I'm always a fan of diversity. If we can have as many decks in the format as possible, especially being competitively relative, I'm all for that, because I feel that's what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really all about. People just playing a bunch of different crazy decks and having a good time. So guys, let me know down in the comments what you think. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and also be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.